Good evening and welcome to the first webinar in the series on language and communication delivered to you by the Department of Modern Languages and Communication of National University of Science and Technology Missis from Moscow. My name is Lilia Bondareva. I'm the head of the Department of Modern Languages and Communication. But at the same time, I am the director of our international master's program on communication and international public relations. This webinar is in fact aimed at those who are not just interested to become better leaders or better communicators, but may also consider doing better job whatever and wherever they are employed. The title of our webinar today is Communication and Creative Leadership. In fact, I just want to get things straight right away. We won't become creative leaders in just 1 hour, but you will know a little bit more about who you are potentially as a leader and how you can build up on this to make much more effective teams around you and around the causes that you work or live for. At the same time, I think this webinar is going to be particularly practical for those potential applicants on our of our program, because however much people feel they are prepared to do a program in communication, the first thing that they face when they come and join our program is that they don't really know how challenging it is to run international projects. So our Communications and International Public Relations Master's Program has 3 tracks. And this is really important to tell you a little bit about this, the composition, the elements, so that you could understand why and how creative leadership and effective communication may make your experience, academic, professional, or personal, much more effective. So our international master's program has got 3 tracks. The first track is academic. This is pretty standard. We run lectures, we run sessions of practical seminars. We also have this informal track, which is devoted to networking, which means we make sure that people are exposed to networks of professionals in the field of science and technology, as well as in the field of communication. We believe that it is absolutely essential to increase the social capital throughout your experience on the program. And for that, we invite speakers. We run master classes and workshops where you can not only learn something specific from professionals in the field, but also add them to your social media, professional social media accounts as friends. Please make sure you remember that. Right now, social contacts and connections make a lot of difference to what you can become as a communications professional. We also run important events on capacity building. If a student in our program lacks certain competency or skill, we make sure that that lack is taken care of, and you may run additional things for that. But the central track of our master's program is practical. We do believe in running practical projects, which may build the portfolio of our students and get them employment ready right by the time of graduation. That includes internships and externships with major technology organizations and companies. We organize study visits to companies companies of different sectors located in Moscow, the capital of Russia. And most importantly, our students from day one are involved in projects. You may say projects are easy. Projects are everywhere. In fact, our life is a project. And we all know the key components to any project. You have a customer who makes an order, who places an order, who wants things to be done. You have to develop a schedule, you have to make sure you have the necessary resources, and you have a team. And this is where the tricky thing comes in. People may seem easy, but we've been running our master's program for 5 years already, and there hasn't been a year when a project team of our students, and by the way, we make sure that we run international project teams, hasn't had some interpersonal, intercultural, and I may say inter-emotional problems that they had to overcome in their work. And this is where the idea of this webinar came from. We truly want our applicants and future students to be people ready, to make sure that they know how to glue teams together. And for that reason, they need to start with themselves. Here I would like to quote a really famous French writer, Jean-Paul Sartre, who actually wrote in one of his plays that hell is other people. And that is, unfortunately, something that we experience at some point in our lives. However kind-hearted and well-humored we are, this is something that we have. But without the people, we cannot deliver things we want. So our solution, and this is the magic formula that we practice on the program, is that we make sure that people get their work best through communication. And the best way to communicate effectively is through better leadership. The question of leadership and the question of communication are linked, but where are they linked? We all know the theory of communication. It's been there for a long time, for nearly a century. We all know the components. We know there is a sender message, which is being encoded and then sent through a certain channel in order to be decoded by the person on the other line of this channel. And this person, recipient, is supposed to make sense of this message. So, however well the levels of message encoding, the medium and decoding have been studied, unfortunately, the key black holes of breakdown problems in communication are the sender and the recipient. And these are people. Well, what does it mean? It means that we can only be able to run our message across all the channels and make sure it is decoded well to the best of our ability to communicate is when we know our recipient. And if we know that the recipient stands or has the similar understanding of what is it that you want to deliver. Leadership. is something that does provide the common reference. This is really important. Communication is perfect when both the sender and the recipient possess this common reference. Whatever it is, however, if they feel strongly about one thing or one principle in life, or even a set of broader principles, but that is really important to keep the people together. And that keeping people together is important to make things happen. And however unacademic and not very scientific this may sound, make things happen, but I personally believe this is what leadership is needed for, to make things happen. Whatever things you may have in mind, and if you want to have them happen, if you want to have them delivered, you probably, and I'm pretty sure those who are listening to us right now and those who are attending this webinar, you're pretty ambitious. I'm sure there is something big that you think. You think big and you think bright, just like the motto of our university is, think bright. So to make those bright things happen, you do need people that would go together with you and make this happen. Coming from a university and academic community, we naturally do research in the fields that we are talking about right now, which is communication and leadership. I know that leadership is a really popular theme, and pretty much everyone has got something to say on that. I'm going to just present to you a quick overview of what the leadership theories have been so far. In fact, laymen, those who haven't been doing any research in the field or haven't been trained by those with academic background, may be confused about so many interpretations of leaders and leadership in the world. And interestingly enough, they all may come from not only different schools of thought, but also from different time periods. So let's have a look. So the first, let's say the earliest approach to leadership, which came about around mid-1800s and continued and dominated throughout the century, it was this so-called great man. And this approach basically, its main premise was that a leader is born. You need to be born to be a leader with that kind of qualities. And well, in fact, you may right now agree that sometimes we even hear this kind of ideas in the popular press or in casual conversations everywhere. However, the principles and approaches have evolved. And you may say, well, the next stage was basically concentrating on traits, trait leadership, when specific traits were believed to belong to leaders, to people, to specific leadership traits. But it didn't take the whole person to be born a leader. You may just have certain traits in it. In fact, then you can see that those theories, they were emerging, they developed, they evolved, and they coexisted. So behavioral principle generally placed a lot of focus on the people the leaders served and the tasks they were assigned. Then came a pretty short period of situational leadership, when leadership emerged and a leader emerged based on the situation around it. The social exchange process was the key point of this so-called influence approach, whenever you could exert a certain influence in a social situation over another person, and it didn't really take a special trait of being a Superman or a Superwoman, or requiring a really high, some overwhelming cause to strive for. No, not really. At the moment, we could say that three systems of leadership or approaches to leadership have been dominating, and perhaps you may recognize yourself adhering to one of them, or maybe to all of them. Well, no wonder. There are so many, again, this topic is getting so much coverage in both academic and non-academic world that it's so easy to get confused. The one that focuses on not only on the leader, but on the follower and followers in themselves. This is reciprocal approach. And in that approach, what matters is how followers define the leader. So the focus shifts from the leader to the followers, to the team, and how they define it. Chaos or systems approach is my favorite. And those people who know me, they probably can say that this is exactly what I demonstrate and how I approach things. I know it may not look really nice to a lot of people, but there is a theory to this. In fact, this approach stipulates that our world is complex and control is not possible. So freedom is needed to be given to the people in order to navigate this ocean of uncertainty towards the common goal. And finally, the approach that has been most recent and taken off really well is this authentic leadership, which basically is driven by the values and purposes. And this approach has specific moral dimensions in the center. It means that we've got to have common philosophy. Like I said a little bit earlier, remember the common reference. This is what makes the whenever you're communicating and generally having people around and getting things done, making things happen, requires a lot of communication. So this is where you need to establish these common grounds. So far, so good. We've done a little bit of theory, and however much I want to dwell more into this, you may probably want to learn a little bit more about yourselves, and more specifically about philosophy. So in order to establish common philosophy, you probably need to know what kind of philosophy you tend to support, consciously or unconsciously. So let's run a little test. You may be accessing this webinar via mobile devices rather than desktop computers, but whatever means you're using, you may want to take notes right now, because in a minute we're going to be running a little test of your, well, it's not a personality test, but it's your philosophy test. So in fact, you will be, I will feature in my several next slides some, let's say, schools of thoughts. And there will be 5 really simple statements shown on each of those slides. What you need to do is to decide how much you adhere to those principles. How likely is it that these statements are yours and you practice and feel this way? So if you feel that it is exactly about you, you mark it as 10 points. On the scale from 0 to 10, the maximum is 10, so you give it a 10. If you feel it's not about you at all, then it's 0, and if you're somewhere in the middle, it's 5. So in fact, it's gonna be a little maybe hard if you choose 3, 4, 5, 4, 6, or 7, but you can do that. So you can score yourself on the scale from 0 to 10 on each of those statements. And you do that for every school of thought. After that, you will calculate your points, and we will see what kind of philosophy dominates in you. And we will also see what kind of philosophy dominates in our little group today. Okay, let's get started. The first school of thought is so-called empirical or pragmatic. So again, evaluate yourself against those statements. If you are the person who likes to do the following thing, to learn by doing, think a little bit about that. Is this you? And how much is this you? Give yourself points. If you really don't have much to, if you can calculate well, do calculus in your head. That's fantastic. Mental arithmetic is great. It's a great exercise here. But if you are not that energized to do that, you can just put it a 0, a 5, and a 10. Statement number 2. Are you the person who likes to experiment and try out things? Number 3, do you trust your senses and impressions rather than rely on other people's thoughts or mental experiments or mental reasoning? Do you feel you're pragmatic and down to earth? Do you implement and reflect on the results of your actions? Okay. Now mark each of these statements on the scale from 0 to 10. Are we ready to go to the next slide? And you know that this is really important. There are no right or wrong answers. Every school of philosophy is unique and special and valuable in its own standing. So you just need to know where you're standing for more than others. Okay, so far so good. And now we are moving on to the next school of thought. This is rationalist or analytical school. You can see you might be in a pretty good company here with Descartes, Spinoza, Kant, Leibniz, and Hegel. So again, on the scale from 0 to 10, decide whether you're the person who likes to use your analytical skills in order to decide, which means reasoning. You do a lot of reasoning, you do a lot of argumentation, points in your head before you make a decision. Number 2, do you understand why things are what they are? Do you want to do that? You try to figure things out for yourself. Do you think you like to be logical? Again, you don't have to be logical all the time. It's only about where you belong, where you strive to be. This is really important. We're talking about your core, the core philosophy of yours. Do you really like to believe that everything can be explained? Or even if it isn't, will be one day? Okay? And finally, do you think that the cause and effect law is critical to understanding of the world? Do you like saying that everything happens for a reason and you look for the reason? If it's you, then mark yourself high on this statement. Okay. Now we're moving on to our next school of thought. Don't worry, there will be only 4 of them. So if you're already struggling to keep all those scores in mind, try a little bit more just for 2 more schools of thoughts. Moralist. Quite a company, I have to say. Socrates, Plato, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer. And this is just a short list, of course. So if you are the person again, for each of the statements, you need to decide how you score on this principle. Do you like to question everything, including some established rules of conduct and moral principles which dominate the society? Do you look for ways to promote justice and fairness? Or at least you like to do that? Do you like to spend time on deciding what's right and what's wrong, even if it's holding you behind? You do feel that needs certain attention. Do you like to make sure that your actions are in line with a set of ethical values? And you do have some ethical values. You have your rules and you stick to them. Do you reflect on the best ways to conduct your life? And when you feel that your ethical principles are no longer valid, you try hard and make sure you develop, you elaborate on them, and you still have your own rule book. And finally, we have this social and political school of thought. So social political, it can be used interchangeably. And this is where you mark yourself on the scale from 0 to 10 if you are the person who likes to believe in your social responsibility. If you like to trust people's ability to work together and to explain what the world is all about together, not individual, lonely experience. Do you like to value human relations and solidarity? Do you like to fight for new and better ways to live together? And do you like to assume that we're all equal? So now that you have all those scores done, please calculate and see which part of you dominates, whether it's social, political, whether it's moralist, whether it's rationalist, whether it's empirical. I'm going to give you just a little bit of time for that. And then we're going to do a quick poll just to see what kind of leadership philosophers we have today in our meeting, in our webinar. I know calculation may be hard, and well, that's good for your brain, they say. Now I'm going to set up the polling. I'm going to ask my colleagues to run the polling for me. What you will see on the screen in a minute is a little poll which consists of only one question. This polling is going to, just a second, we're checking if we're all set for that. This polling is going to have only one question in it. Which category of philosophy, which category do you which philosopher type category did you score most points in? Are you ready? Please see if you can start answering the questions. Okay, we have already some of you. Okay, I see your answers. That's amazing. This is a little surprising, to be perfectly honest. Okay. We're waiting for most of the participants to answer. Right. Okay, it's now getting balanced, which is amazing. You know, the best thing in the world is when you have everything balanced. Oh, perhaps not, but balance is what it all is about. Maybe it's just me. I'm a very chaotic person, so I prefer everything to be balanced in all the parts of life. All right, just another 5 seconds. And those who have voted, thank you for doing so. I'm going to end the poll right now. And are you interested to see which group dominates? I'm going to share the results right now. As you can see from those who took part in the poll, the dominant type is social political. Well, right now, let's see. Thank you for that. Right now, let's see what it actually means. It means only good things, don't worry. For those of you who chose the first type of philosophy, so you have to know what kind of common references or what kind of reference you may want to portray and project. Or maybe you do that naturally without any efforts. So pragmatic leader-philosopher, it's down to earth. And this is really valuable. Again, you have to understand your core, your philosophical core, and then you, by showing what you stand for, you make it open and clear for the people around you who you are and where they will go if they go together with you. So this is how it's important to learn who you are in the first place. So the pragmatic leader-philosopher addresses challenges in a straightforward way. And look, isn't that great when you don't beat around the bush, when you just when you're just direct and say what you think in a constructive and practical manner. This person manages people equally. This is where you probably this is what you believe in, right? And for you, facts speak for themselves. So data, facts, this is what you value in your work. Remember that effective communication, and we decided to focus today in our conversation on common references or reference points. So again, even if you are not this type of person, it's really important to be able to decode the messages coming from the person who stands for pragmatic values. So if you do want to persuade, convince, or come to an agreement with a person who belongs to this type, or if you're a leader, if the person you work with falls into this category, then probably these are the points that you need to stress whenever you have some important issue to sort out. Okay, let's see what the next type of leader-philosopher we have. This is the rationalist leader-philosopher. This is important to. This is an important leader type too, because this is the kind of a person who likes to understand why everything is the way it is. And this is exactly the point where the person wants to get causes of things before deciding. So the person or you may look a little slow or may need to take time. But again, instead of just taking it as a downside, you have to understand, or you have to portray that this is where you stand for. You stand for rationally weighing arguments before you decide, before you make a decision. And this kind of leader is absolutely fantastic at building strategies and plans. And I have to say, I'm so upset about the fact to admit that this is not me. I do love strategies, but I don't like the actual time we need to build them in a proper way. That's why, again, by saying, and this is really important, that right now, especially in our program, it's not individual leaders that we only focus on. In fact, we're shifting our understanding from individual leader to the collective leadership of a group, because we believe that actual big differences in life are only possible when we make collective efforts. So in your team, your leadership team may consist of these powerful personalities, and you have to have one that can build really great strategies and plans for you. So the third type, this was a minority in our webinar today among our participants, but you do really, you will come to the point to appreciate having these people around. People who contemplate what is right and wrong. And that means that if you are that kind of person, then probably you have people turning to you when they're in doubt, when they have, when they are at crossroads, when they have those dilemmas in life. And this is exactly the kind of the person that that can deal with that. And this person wants to be fair to people. We all do. But this fairness, the concept of fairness, is central. And the leaders like that, they may take a lot of time trying to establish the criteria for fairness. And exactly this one is, well, in terms of the practical manifestation of this leadership type, this is the people who are concerned with the code of conduct. And it's not only about, you know, keeping to the rule book and making sure everyone adheres and complies, but this is really the moral compass that we all need to navigate a lot of uncertain and let's say novel developments that we may face. And finally, the type which is dominating among the participants of this conversation today, it's this social political leader philosopher. You know, to some extent, I'm not surprised. This is the kind of the people that we find most likely to apply for the program, for our master's program in communications and international public relations. But you will be surprised to know that other types of leaders and philosophers may also and will thrive on the program, because the focus of our program is to communicate in the field of science and technology, which means that the people who are going to, our graduates are going to run communication support projects for really complex technological enterprises and companies. And that means that we also welcome people with technology background, so that the diversity of minds and backgrounds can create the synergy effect. So the social or political leader philosopher is someone who recognizes the importance of power and network. They realize that networks are key. You may probably recognize some of the earliest things that I said in this webinar today. Exactly, social capital, networks. That's why it's so important that we build up our networks of people and connections. And that is not just to be advancing in life without actually deserving that, but be learning from those wonderful people we have, and be learning from them and with them. So the social and political leader philosopher is really concerned with social environment in order to, so that it could be conducing to good deeds, to create the environment that empowers and stimulates positive changes. And well, power may be a controversial term, but the understanding of power as a resource that is needed to make things happen, this is probably what the social and political leader philosopher exercises. By saying power, we mean the ability to influence other people's decisions and actions. And since this concept may have its different interpretations in different fields of social studies, I'm not going to dwell much on this. And we are going to move on to talk a little bit about the practical implications of learning about the common references that you and the people in your team or in the project may have. So by having or establishing your own reference point, it's important not only to project that to the team and the people around you, but it's also important to, and it's not only about understanding the people around you, you can also create meaning for the project teams you have. So what does that mean, create meaning? You can do that by figuring out how each of the people in your project team, for instance, approach some basic questions. And again, one of the really, one real basic question is, why do I work? Or why do I study on the program? Or why do I participate in this project? So, and again, those basic questions may come from those different philosophies that people may have. Some may believe they want things to be fair, and they want to make their own contribution to creating this fairness in the world. Some may be really pragmatic about how things can turn out, and they want to see results. They want to see deliverables. Then another important, and again, the list is not, by all means, it's not complete here. It's just a very hint of what can be done to create meaning for teams. It's really important to be able to build the working environment that stretches. Because if you know where the person wants to be, or not even where, but what the person wants to be, you can show and you can jointly co-create the space for this to be happening. So, however, for instance, if people in your team, and again, I'm not talking about the actual practical aspects of the work that you are doing. I'm talking about the space, the environment where these things happen. So some of the people may want to establish rules, and they really they feel that something is not working in the environment, and they feel that the rules would make things much more balanced. Let them do that, even if it's not their direct duty. Or if you feel that somebody somebody may want to go out and explore things and make useful contacts, and may probably build his or her profile in a way because he or she feels that the social influence is important to get things done. Let them do that, even if they do not actually formally represent the project, but let them go and shine. This is something that they will be learning to do for the common reference. Again, knowing what this common reference is important. Reminding people of what we are fighting for is also important. And then for this fight, in a peaceful way, of course, let people develop, evolve, and empower them to do this. Another practical thing that I'd like to focus on is how to energize people. Well, you know, in fact, this little webinar of today can be extended in a whole series of conversations on how we run projects, including the most important project that we may ever have, which is our life. So having the project and knowing what you want to achieve is not enough. You need to have the energy to do that. And the energy does not mean resources. A lot of business operations actually only factor in some tangible things, but also some established things, capital, tools, human resources. But there is this really intangible thing of energy, how energized people. Well, you know, motivation is hard to measure, but this is not about motivation. It's about the vibe, how people come into how people go through their lives. And this is what you can do and you should do, because what people do to make things happen is part of how they define themselves. So some ways to energize people around you is an exciting vision. Again, let me go back once again to stress how important this common reference is, or even if your references are different, then try to include those things that matter for the people around you into the vision. And once again, it doesn't have to be a big company or a major project. Even if you have a study group with your peer to get ready for an exam or implement a project, this is still important to have an energized peer next to you. Look how many times we find ourselves really lonely and isolated when the people that you relied on or trusted do not pull their weight. Or sometimes you can do that. I mean, there are people who have their reasons not to contribute because they simply do not believe in the thing they're doing. And this is how you make sure that this exciting vision, for example, okay, let's do this study group and let's pass the exam with the flying colors. That's what matters. This is what we do in everyday situations as well. Personal opportunities. Again, it's not only about workplace. Believe me, whatever you're conjuring up or whatever you're thinking about, if you come to somebody with a proposal, hey, come on, let's go and make this little exciting. Okay, let's throw a party for everyone on the every student of the department. Well, sounds exciting, but you need to see what personal opportunities people may have in this project. Competition is a healthy thing. So competition is not only frustrating, but it's also a lever. So you use that in order to make sure that life is energized. So catching up with somebody who has the leading position may run really, really well. Allow for ambiguity, and this is something that I totally love. This is my favorite tip, to be honest. When things are structured and limited and prescribed, even if you come from the corner where things should be organized, that may work for you. However, you may have missed out certain vibes that people really feel attached to, and they do not find the space in your system. And because they don't know how to fit in with this important principle of theirs, they may find it really frustrating. However, when you give space, when you allow people to be creative because they know that you cannot plan for everything and provide for everything, you let them know that the environment around is unknown, and this the beauty, the calling of the unknown can really energize people. This is a novelty of that. This is really energizing. And naturally, you have to behave as an energized role model yourself. And how to energize yourself, well, that's the whole different matter, and we are not focusing on this here in this webinar. But here is a little checklist to see if you are working with highly energized team. I'm sure all of you have done, have run or have participated in a project one day. So these are the signs that you're having really energized team, this really excellent and sparkling glue that keeps people, sparkling glue, I don't believe this is even possible. I'm sorry, I'm not a chemist by nature, so perhaps this is not the right way to say that. Anyway, a lot of open discussion. Fast is better than slow. I know that some of you may find it, especially those who love to be rational. Rationalists may find it a little demotivated, but really if this is commonly exists, then you have an energized team. And it's not just the team, but everyone is excited to be contributing. There is space to hear unexpected questions, and these questions need to be there. Ideas are challenged; they are not taken for granted. Nobody's afraid of speaking up, and everyone is there to win, because win. And by winning, I don't mean being overly competitive. I mean, make things happen is win. So winning the actual obstacles or barriers and circumstances to make things happen. Some of you, and right now I'm coming to the end of my presentation today, but some of you may be probably at the very early stages of your careers, or academic, professional, or otherwise, and you may say, I don't think I'm in the position to lead or to exercise those practical tips, but surprise, surprise, you can also try and lead your own leaders. Again, common points of reference are still important, but even if you feel that your point of reference is different, but you need your leader on board to make a great thing happen, then you need to come to the point the points which matter to them. So you need to know what your leader's goals are, business, professional, academic, and how what you're proposing, if you're afraid to if you need to approach them with this exciting new idea, how that matches their vision and how that matches their set of principles. It does help whenever you have a great idea to share. It does help if you have already built the reputation to be a great performer. Indeed, those who have a track record of excellent, stable performance, it doesn't have to be initiative. You can be performing in your own way, in your own field, and at your own pace. This is what matters. Then you have to take advantage of the fear of missing out, because you may be suggesting something that your leader has never considered, and you say, okay, fine, we're not doing that, but look what will happen if we don't. This is what we may, this is the opportunity we may miss. This is something that we may not really succeed in, and this is what the competition does. Remember, use competition as lever. Do get support from somebody who is well respected already. And this is something that young people, I mean, less experienced, we don't have to be young to be less experienced or more experienced, to be honest. This is something that we sometimes forget. Build alliances and coalitions in a good sense of the word. Having just one person present with a great idea may not be legitimate enough for an experienced, busy person to even contemplate. So try to, even if you feel a little uncomfortable sharing your great plan, don't worry. If you're there to make great things happen, try to be humble and focus on what you want to achieve rather than what you want to come across, how you want to come across. This is really important. And finally, two things that we cannot avoid. One is that you need to leverage objective data, not just ideas, but you have to provide some analytical work to support your idea. And it's really a good idea if you already conduct a low-cost experiment, trying your idea out and showing what happened in the what happens. So hypothesis is fine, but if you already run a little experiment, that is much more convincing, really honestly. So as I have demonstrated, you can lead your leaders, but just the very first thing that I started with is that to lead authentically, to be naturally leading and keeping people together, keeping people focused on the thing you want to achieve, you really need to know yourself. So with that, I would like to say thank you all. Maybe you want to explore some of these books that inspired me to talk to you today. And I would like also to remind you that this webinar has been delivered by the Department of Modern Languages and Communication of National University of Science and Technology MISIS in Moscow, Russia. This is the first webinar in the series of webinars to support our master's program applicants. We run 2 international master's programs. Like I said, one in communications and international public relations, and the other is in second language teaching and pedagogical design in digital environments. And stay with us for the following webinars every Thursday throughout the month of June. Thank you so much. And right now I'm ready to at least try to answer some of your questions.
Julia, thank you very much for this very inspiring and informative talk. And we have several questions from our participants. And the first question is from Ziaulai Zia. As a student, what do I have to do from now on to become a good leader in the future?
Thank you for this really excellent question. So what you need to do is try make things happen in the form of small little projects that you would need other people on board. It doesn't matter how big or small those projects can be, but running those projects, creating your own vision to attract other people to be with you is really important. And it's even better if you do that without any formal assignment, because this is when we feel our project groups sometimes fail to communicate. Project groups on our master's program. We run projects as assignment, and students expect the supervisors and the faculty to be constantly pushing and providing the necessary incentives for every participant to pull their weight. However, what we do really need, and we encourage students to do that on their own, is that people really can work together and figure things out among themselves, how to get to the point where we need them to be. So this is my short answer. Think about something small but valuable that you want to happen. Get some people on board and make them work with you to make this happen. And that would be great for your portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have 2 more questions from one participant, Junaid Shah Sori, and I'm going to voice them now. What are the important characteristics of being a leader, and which leader philosophy is being implemented in 2020? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, the most prominent approach to leadership right now is authentic leadership, and it's riding among young people. Again, it depends. Well, it's really important to be aware that right now we're functioning in multi-generational organizations and environments. That said, I mean, at the same time, you may be working with people who belong to different philosophies, to different, they have different points of reference. So what may energize a team of people focusing on creating equity and value for the society, you may still be at odds with maybe more senior members of the team or of the organization who still believe in practical, down-to-earth approaches. And reconciling those is probably the true mastery of leadership. So the first step here is to recognize those differences, and then reconciling them is probably the feature of the real true wise leader. For the 2020, well, 2020 is an interesting year, as you all may say, and here I have to say that probably allowing ambiguity is really important, and embracing that. Coming to terms with the fact that things can be planned, expected, but they can never be guaranteed. So I do, as I said, probably this is the time when I feel most well, I feel I am probably the right person to be, is that because I realize that our world is dominated by really multiple complex systems, and this systems thinking is something that we all need to study in 2020. One little change in one system can make a dramatic effect on the whole combination of systems, because seeing the world as systems is what matters now. So realizing that you can't be isolated, not in your country, not in your family, not in your beliefs. Whatever you are doing today in your private capacity may have a really dramatic effect on so many things in other parts of the world or in different times later.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question from Hila Amalia. It's about the current world status quo for the leaders. And what do you think about today's leaders engaging technologies in decision making?
Mm-hmm. This is about algorithms, I'm sure, and artificial intelligence. Algorithms are useful, and perhaps you're all aware of this seminal work of Daniel Kahneman, Think Slow, Decide Fast, when he talks, and basically he's a Nobel Prize winner, for the record. This is really important. He's a behavioral psychologist, but his Nobel Prize came in the fields of economics. So what he says is that algorithms are really much more reliable than people's judgments. In a way, and I'm not going to dwell into details here, but he says, and I tend to agree with him, that he would rather trust an algorithm in identifying flaws in some medical records, or identifying mistakes in calculations. However, so technology is fine. Don't get me wrong. It does not mean that there are no people in this sequence. The role of people is to provide this moral and ethical guidance for the decisions. And this is something that artificial intelligence hasn't been able to come up with. And besides, however much effort is being made into this, our principles they are not carved in stone. And like our webinar demonstrated, we may have such diverse points of references that we will never be able to apply the same algorithm in judging how this decision is moral or ethical. So in short, technology is fine. Algorithms are fine for getting us important analytical conclusions for making decisions. But when it comes to the field of moral judgments and ethics, then a human input is absolutely necessary. Well, it is my understanding that we need to be finishing right now. I would like to say thank you so much for staying with us today. I do hope you may consider also staying with us every Thursday in June for our further webinars. With that, I would like to thank all the team, technical team that has supported with this webinar, and thank you. Goodbye.